Welcome back to Movies TV Man. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter and Vero at Movies TV Man. And welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. The Flash movie is the DC Extended Universe's No Way Home. But in a lot of ways, it's bigger, because the Flash movie changes everything and relaunches a franchise. But you've got to give credit to Warner Brothers. They saw No Way Home coming, and it was clear it was going to be a success. A lot of people are weaponizing No Way Home to use against WB and the DC Extended Universe, saying, you see, the MCU give the fans what they want. And, you know, fans are still waiting to see Superman again. I get it. There's things that you can pick apart in the DC Extended Universe. Justice League is an absolute disgraceful situation, and what happened with Snyder. But sooner or later, we've got to say, you know, it's happened, it's done, it's time to move forward. And the Flash movie is going to do that. I'm sure there's people sitting on social media with a Barry Allen voodoo doll, pricking it, hoping that the movie fails. There's a lot of Restore the Snyderverse fans, not me, who think if the Flash fails, then they can restore the Snyderverse. In fact, as I've suggested before, what could easily happen is they could disband the DCEU and just focus in Matt Reeves' the Batman Earth 2 universe, so you could still not restore the Snyderverse. I've told you before, the best chance for restoring the Snyderverse is for the success of the DC Extended Universe. Barry Allen is literally going to tread through every DC Extended Universe movie. And people talking about, you know, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, you know, and Tom Holland together on screen, it's great. And people trying to say that Michael Keaton reprising his role as Batman isn't as big as that. Are you seriously trying to tell me that Michael Keaton's Batman, who came along before these Spider-Men did, in one of the most iconic first live-action movies, as Batman, a celebrated version of Batman, people ain't going to go and see it? Someone else said yesterday, DCEU stands and shields saying that the Flash will make the same amount of money as No Way Home. No Way Home has made nearly over $500 million in its opening weekend. I can't see the Flash doing that, but I still see the Flash doing really well for the reasons I've just spoken about. It's a huge crossover movie. There's loads of established DC live action characters that are going to be in it. It's not just a celebration of the DC Extended Universe. It's going to be a celebration of everything we've ever seen in DC live action, whether it's the stuff you love or you don't love. It's all going to be there in some way, shape or form. So the Flash movie is actually bigger than No Way Home. But the MCU is an established franchise with, you know, consumer confidence, and we know that. And we have to be honest. We can't be blind. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One, Harley Quinn, and the Suicide Squad did not do well at movie theatres. And with what Spider-Man No Way Home is doing, we cannot use the pandemic as an excuse anymore. I have done that. I can't do that anymore. For some reason, people weren't very interested in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. And no, Snyderverse fans, it wasn't because you boycotted the movie. There's a lot more people out there. This is what it's about, people. In the COVID pandemic, and to be fair, the Birds of Prey movie was just before the pandemic, when it was that small. So people weren't listening. People just thought it was scaremongering. So Birds of Prey, again, people didn't come out for that movie. They didn't want to see that movie. But in terms of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, when you're in a global pandemic, you're thinking to yourself, is it worth going to see this movie? Is it worth risking my health and my life to go and see this movie? And quite honestly, I know a lot of you would have probably said no. I did go out and see James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. And I loved it. I sat in a movie theatre on my own, screen on my own, and I enjoyed it. Is it the best movie ever, like some said? No. Is it the best DC Extended Universe movie, that like some people were saying? No. That's just a liable thing to say. But for me, you know, and if you think it's the best movie ever, good luck to you. But I don't believe that. I think most reasonable people now don't think that. I understand after you've just seen a movie, you're going to put it in the top of your rankings. But James Gunn's The Suicide Squad isn't better than Man of Steel, BVS, even the first Suicide Squad as far as I'm concerned, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, and of course Zack Snyder's Justice League. Definitely not better than Zack Snyder's Justice League. These are all my opinions. So, the last few DC Extended Universe movies haven't fared very well. And there's no looking away from that. There's no getting away from that. That's an obvious thing. We know. Look, I was talking on Twitter about the DC Extended Universe. The DC Extended Universe is an interesting little franchise, touched by so many different hands by now. And I was watching Man of Steel. I got halfway through it and then I was called away. Past 2 days that's happened to me. Man of Steel is a brilliant modern day take on a Superman movie. But you look at the DC Extended Universe, it's interesting. I think there's more good movies than bad. Man of Steel, BVS, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, etc. Zack Snyder's Justice League. They're really, really good films. But we know why they're not why the franchise itself isn't as successful as the Marvel Extended Universe. The Marvel Extended Universe is family, kid, and people friendly. It's mainstream friendly. You see, people keep on shouting about making the Snyderverse part of the central universe again. That's not going to happen. You can shout and scream as much as you want, but it didn't work. It worked for me, it worked for some of you out there, and that's great, but it didn't work for a broader audience, and you know it. So if it comes back as some kind of Elseworld parallel universe thing on HBO Max. Personally, I'd love to see Justice League 2 and 3 in a movie theatre. It deserves it. And I want to restore the Snyderverse. But that doesn't mean I didn't see the gaping flaws and holes in having Zack Snyder and auteur do a franchise that the studio actually wanted a broader audience to enjoy. We know what happened, we know what went wrong, and we know why they drove Snyder out of the picture. And there's no point in being blind to that. You can comment and say, Mick, you're wrong, restore the Snyderverse. But I want to restore the Snyderverse, but I'm not blind. And neither should you be. Why is the MCU so successful? And I know some of you don't agree with the tone and the way the MCU movies are done, but it works and they're making shitloads of money. Go to the cinema and see the cheering and the clapping. That's the situation you want to get to. And unfortunately, the DC Extended Universe, after what, 9-10 movies, hasn't got there. For one reason or the other. When you're developing a franchise, you have to decide, especially these days. When Stallone was doing Rocky, he thought he was going to do one film and that was it. He wasn't really trying to do it to make loads of money and, you know, make money for a studio. He had a vision about a movie about a boxer from the streets, and it worked, and he came back again and again and again. And it's a continuing story, and it works. And it, you know, really, it was making big money for those days. But the MCU was created for many, many reasons, because Kevin Feige and a bunch of other Marvel people wanted a cinematic universe, but they wanted to make money from it. They weren't just doing it because they love Marvel. So they did it. You know, and Feige's a genius. He went and got Robert Downey Jr., an actor nobody would touch with a barge pole because he was in jail for taking drugs. But it wasn't rocket science to trust Robert Downey Jr. Of course, Kevin knew, he must have known that, you know, and Robert was in a great position in a way because there was a determination to get back on the saddle. So he wasn't going to make any mistakes again. And it worked. And that was a huge call. The movies work. They are the sandwich you take a bite of and move from quickly. They are the chewing gum that run out of flavour quickly. But people have sampled this and they like it. The MCU keeps on working. And the biggest proof of the pudding of the eating is that when they make a mediocre, bland movie, it makes a hell of a lot of money. Eternals, Black Widow, hasn't made anywhere near what No Way Home's about to make, but it's all part of the jigsaw puzzle. The latest stuff, I keep on forgetting what it's called, but the latest Disney Plus Marvel show. You know, it's very slow, it's very bland, and it's very boring. And it's clear to me that we're probably going to see Daredevil in the finale. We're definitely seeing Kingpin. So I think we're going to see more Daredevil. There may be some kind of connection to No Way Home as well. So Feige has got this franchise to a place after 4 phases where it's up there. It's untouchable. And he's not complacent. The DCEU isn't there. But the Flash movie can take it there. There's so many different factions of DC fandom. It's very different with Marvel. You've got the die-hard comic book fans who really don't like the MCU but still watch the movies, and you've got everyone else who adores them. Everyone. When you've got a situation when every normie comes in to watch every movie or TV episode from a franchise, you've got to win. People are not willing to do that with the DC Extended Universe, and here's a great example. Justice League was a flop, and Aquaman made over $1 billion. How do you explain that? What went wrong there? We know what went wrong within the movie, and the movie's problematic, of course. But why didn't people in the opening weekend, before they saw it, go and see the movie? I don't know, do you? Before they knew it was going to be crap, right? When I went to see Justice League, I didn't know it was going to be what it was. I actually believed Zack Snyder and everyone else that Joss and Zack were friends and he was just finishing the movie off. I was so shocked after I saw the movie. I knew what had happened for real after I saw that movie. But when I went into the movie theatre, I expected to see a 1 hour, 59 minutes epic. And it wasn't. Of course, you smell a rat a little bit when they reduced the time of the movie and things like that. They made a huge mistake. But the DCEU was problematic from the very start. You have to make a decision. Do you want to do something like Dune? That is, I can't even say June properly. Is it Dune or it's not June, it's June. Right, got that right now. Let's move on. But you either want an immersive classic like Dune, and he's going to make another 2 movies, probably more of that. Huge. So that's an immersive movie. But it's not a superhero movie, so you can get away with it. So he's doing what Denis Villeneuve does. And more people are interested, for the first time actually interested in Denis's work, apart from just the cinephiles, right? So you have to make a decision as a studio. Do I want to bring in Autorin to do a DC Extended Universe who creates an immersive kind of franchise? Or do I want to do what they've been doing since 2008? So it's 2011, 2012. You're deciding whether or not to do a DC Extended Universe. So David Esquire comes to them with this Superman alien invasion idea, right? So it's clear from Man of Steel with the Bruce Wayne and Wayne Enterprises and satellite kind of Easter eggs they're planning to start this franchise. So Man of Steel is a really good film. It's immersive, it's beautiful, it's stunning. It's got some great narrative beats to it, but it isn't everyone's cup of tea. And there lies the problem, because 2008's Iron Man is. Now, Iron Man 2 is a piece of shit, but people still went to see it. And people didn't out the movie like certain people did for BVS. Why? Because the first Iron Man earned the right for Iron Man 2 not to be all that. The MCU became bulletproof, but in the early days, Marvel fans weren't happy with Feige and what he was doing. There's no question about that, but they didn't react. They weren't reactive. Now, you're going to tell me, Snyderverse fans, but WB did. They did react in the end, but there's a big difference towards what Feige was doing. In Phase 1, he was just making really old-type fashion films with a beginning, middle, and an ending that were superhero films. There wasn't many crossovers or cameos at that stage. It wasn't the most loved franchise ever. But Feige knew If he could get to Avengers and do a great Avengers movie and really make it work, then he had pot gold. And he did. They struck gold with the first Avengers and they haven't looked back since. But Iron Man 2 isn't a divisive movie. Iron Man 2 is just a boring movie with a boring villain, but there's half a good story there for sure. And Robert Downey Jr. is still great. You're literally watching that movie for him. Then you go to The Incredible Hulk. Again, it's not a divisive movie, but a lot of people don't like it. It doesn't do that great, but it's okay, and people prefer it to Ang Lee's Hulk. Because Ang Lee's Hulk is like, really in a way, is like BVS and MOS. It's very different. I mean, if you think about Ang Lee's Hulk, it's even more divisive than the Snyderverse. Think about it. I love Ang Lee's Hulk. I like the fact he's splitting the screen like a comic book page. I think it's an interesting idea. But it's not the greatest movie ever, but I still like to watch it. It's very arty. But this is the problem when you go down an arty direction. Because most people who go to watch comic book movies, even pre-MCU, are not really going to see that. And you can judge this by pre-MCU, what did well. So Superman the movie did well. Superman 2 did a little bit less money because it was out at the same time as Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But it's a very celebrated movie, Superman 2. Then Superman 3 took it to another direction. People didn't like that. That wasn't an arty direction. It was a more comedic direction. But even more comedic than the MCU. It just didn't work. In Superman 4, they withdrew the funds. They didn't have the money to make a great Superman film. And Superman Returns, although it has its charm and I kind of enjoy the movie, lacked something. Because it came out at a time when people wanted to see Superman actually fight other supervillains. And then Man of Steel gives people what they ask for, but it gives it to them like 100%. And some people didn't like the fact that there was loads of destruction and Superman wasn't going around saving everyone. There's actually a way you can do it for that to work, but there's also Zack Snyder doing it in the real world where everyone can't be saved. And I get both arguments. I do. I love Man of Steel. But here's the thing. What the MCU were doing, they felt the environment of what they were in. The world was changing. We had the Dark Knight trilogy. You see, the Dark Knight had people and critics and journalists and fans saying everything should be like the Dark Knight. But Feige could see that that wasn't the future, because as soon as we got to the Dark Knight Rises, people were over Nolan's Batman. And that film wasn't the beloved, mammoth beast that the second movie was. For one reason or the other, I think the Dark Knight Rises is a really, really good film, but you could see that there was another idea there and then they went with another idea quickly. I don't really think he had a trilogy plan. Anyway, so, when we get to Iron Man, there's a plan and they stick to the plan. That's what I'm saying. Now, the thing is, Snyder has a plan as well. Snyder does have a plan, but it's a plan that not everyone embraces. That's the difference. Because people didn't want to wait through Man of Steel, and then the problem is, when you go from Man of Steel to BVS, it's totally different. It's a kind of sequel, but it's not. What's happened to the Codex? The Codex isn't mentioned. There should have been a story to tell there, which was David Goya's baby, but they booted David Goya out. David Goya should have got his Man of Steel 2 to do the Codex and Brainiac story that he wanted to make. But they didn't allow it, and Zack didn't seem interested in the Codex. So when you talk about Snyder's arc, and this is the problem with Man of Steel. Man of Steel is a visual narrative of Snyder, but the narrative in kind of storytelling form is Nolan's narrative and Goya's narrative, especially Goya's. But then they chopped that out. So where's the Codex? There's the problem. Some of the plan has already been disbanded. They've decided that Superman can't have a movie on his own because the last movie made just under 700 million. So that's pretty reactive, isn't it? And that's a mistake as well. The second film should have been a story by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goya, screenplay by David S. Goya, directed by Zack Snyder. I think Zack's best position in a film is purely being a director. That's when it works as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so they should have had the same thing going on with Man of Steel 2. And then maybe they could have had a BVS movie. It would have made more sense. So they totally skipped over the Codex thing already. And I know that Henry Cavill isn't happy about that. He wanted to continue that story. It finished in a good, happy-go-lucky way, but then we went to the somber thing. I like BVS, I love BVS, but we have to be honest about things. Again, we can't be blinded about something just because we love something. Just because you have a son who commits loads of crimes and you make excuses for him all the time. Oh, he doesn't mean it, that kind of thing. And so the DC Extended Universe kind of leaped from one catastrophe to the other. They kind of rebranded the first Suicide Squad. Wonder Woman is a great movie, a really great CBM, but they changed the direction of that movie as well. So Michelle McLaren was going to direct that, then she wasn't. Like the Flash movie had so many directors because they brought in someone that they didn't have confidence in to do what they needed to do. They brought in an auteur, on the word, on the say-so, of another auteur. And it was an absolute clusterfuck. So what they're doing now, in fact, is the right thing. They are making a Flash movie that will reboot the universe. As I've said, a celebration of all DC live action. It literally is Spider-Man No Way Home, but even huger. We've heard we're going to get some amazing things in this movie. And people are saying, Spider-Man No Way Home is giving fans what they want. What are you doing, DC? The Flash movie. Michael Keaton's Batman. Grant Gusting's The Flash. Right? The older 80s version of The Flash. Those three Flashes standing together on screen. It's not as iconic as Maguire, Garfield and Holland, but still, it's going to be awesome. And who knows what else we're going to see in that movie. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion that this is going to be a great movie, and I've explained why before. But the point is, it's a very exciting moment in the DC Extended Universe. Now, it's true, and I've said this before, it can either make or break the whole fucking franchise. But as I've already said as well, they've still got an out with Matt Reeves' Earth 2. So it's actually quite smart. So as soon as they heard No Way Home was coming, they decided to go with this. And everything that we've heard about this movie is utterly exciting. The cameos, the crossovers, the idea of Barry Allen, doing Flashpoint and meeting Sasha Calle's Supergirl, which we're all excited about, and Michael Keaton's Batman is the biggest thing you can do in a comic book movie. And he is iconic. He is awesome. There's no problem with it. There's some of you, especially Snyderverse fans, are not happy with his inclusion. But I don't understand what your fucking problem is, because Ben Affleck's in the Flash movie as well. So why don't you want Keaton involved? So here's the thing. It's happening. This is for the fans, right? You talk about No Way Home being for the fans. Well, the Flash movie is for the fans. This is why they're restructuring the universe. We've tried the Snyder way. It didn't work. It didn't make them enough money. It made them solid money, but not the money that they wanted. Facts. We've tried Justice League, copying and pasting the Marvel Cinematic Universe in a terrible way, by the way. It didn't work either. So we're trying this now. We're starting again. Why are we starting again? It's not just because of the Snyderverse. It's because of Justice League. Things have to be cleaned up, right? Now, I don't know if anything's been deleted, but if the director of the film is saying nothing's forgotten and everything's going to be remembered, then I would assume that nothing is being deleted. And I haven't always thought that. I've been inconsistent with that, and I apologise. But when someone says nothing's going to be forgotten, that means nothing's being deleted. So congratulations. We can all keep what we love. But I think there's got to be a way where we put Justice League to bed once and for all. And we'll see what they do in this movie and what they don't do in this movie. This time next year, we will know what the Flash movie is and what it means for the DC Extended Universe. But there's some people who are going to continue to weaponize this movie and the other DC Extended Universes coming next year, whether it's Matt Reeves' The Batman, because Ben Affleck hasn't got his movie anymore, so people are bitter about that and spitting mad about it. This is showbiz. This is the way it works. I'm not saying don't fight for the Snyderverse, because I certainly am. I want to see those films. They may have to come out in a different way now by the time we see the Flash movie, which I think will touch upon certain things that Snyder wanted to do in Justice League 2 and 3. And the same with some other movies as well. Wonder Woman 3 is a great example of that, with Diana probably becoming Queen of Themyscira, you know, at the end of that movie, or during that movie, or whatever. And we'll see what kind of arc she's got in the Shazam movie. So, if you ask me, and you're not, I think the Flash movie is going to be everything and more that No Way Home is right now. If you're a DC fan, and you like anything live action that's ever been DC, this film's going to celebrate it, it's going to tell its own story, and it's going to basically reboot and rebrand this franchise that needs to happen. I can't see the future. I can't tell you what's going to happen, if it's going to win, if it's going to be great. But when someone tells me that, you know, Barry Allen's going to tread through every film, a bit like Marty McFly treading through Back to the Future 1 and Back to the Future 2, that kind of thing, and celebrate the DC Extended Universe and maybe other live action films he'll be treading through that are not part of the DCEU. This is huge, and this is just as exciting as Spider-Man No Way Home. I enjoy the fact that people are celebrating and cheering Spider-Man No Way Home. The box office is sensational. It's great news for comic book fans and comic book movie and live action fans. It's great. I don't begrudge that success. I am not claiming that the Flash movie can have that success, but it's literally doing a similar thing and then some. So there's no reason why this film can't do half as well as No Way Home. No Way Home is heading to about a $2 billion total global box office. There's no question about that. The Flash isn't going to do that, and if it does, fantastic. But there's no reason why the Flash movie can't get close, you know, close to $1 billion or something like that. As I say, because the DCEU hasn't got that consumer confidence. There are reasons why Birds of Prey didn't work. There are reasons why people didn't rush to see the Suicide Squad. But I've always explained to everyone that they were just placeholder movies. There was no desperation for those movies to be huge, especially in the peak of, you know, well, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was in the peak of a pandemic. But that's not an excuse anymore, because Spider-Man No Way Home has done so well. So I'm extremely excited for The Flash, and I do think it's going to have similar excitement as this movie has. Of course, it depends if they got it right. No one can tell you that, but they've got all the moving parts there. It's going to have the best special effects people. It's going to have the best people making it. They've already made it, and now they're working on post. And hopefully we see a new trailer early in the new year, which is exciting. But it's actually the whole universe that's exciting next year. There's no film coming out next year that I'm not anticipating to see. So I'm excited, but this is what happens in life. It's the either-or generation. Well, the MCU's doing so well. Well, look at the DCEU. The DCEU came after a celebrated franchise, and it made a lot of mistakes and a lot of missteps, and no one can deny it. I'm a DCEU stand all through, and I can't make those kind of excuses as a biased fan. Of course I can't. The mistakes are there for everyone to see, because the MCU came in and they were doing stuff and also making a few mistakes when nobody was watching. The problem with the DCEU was everybody has been watching from day one and ready to kind of underline all the mistakes that have been made. Those mistakes have been made. There is no disputing those mistakes. But now we move on, hopefully to a brighter future. And I think the future can be very bright for the DCEU. We will have to wait and see, of course. But the slates we're getting are very, very exciting. 2023 is also starting to fill out, and bigger news is coming, of course. So It started in 2013. They can't take away the fact that Man of Steel was the first DCEU movie, a movie I think which is amazing, and it's great that Superman, the character that I stand the most in fiction, you know, was the introduction to this franchise. So one way or the other, I'm assuming Henry Cavill will be in the movie, even if it's just Barry Allen stepping through Man of Steel, but we will have to wait and see. But for me, there's no reason to look at the success of No Way Home and then weaponize it and using it to attack the DC Extended Universe. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. Until then, au revoir, goodbye, auf Wiedersehen.